Okay, so we've had a good look at the edit window and cleaning up tracks, set all our groups in place and trimmed up a lot of the regions and clips in this session. It's basically ready to head across now to the mix window. So the mix window, this is basically where you're turning up and down the volumes and you're getting your signals and you're panning them around from left to right, which is what pan means. So here in the mix window, if we have a look at this kick drum track here, we have the name of it for starters. So we can double click on the name of that and change the name if we want to call it something different. We have the volume up and down, so we can turn up and down this track just by clicking on this little fader here and turning it up and down. We have our solos and mute buttons, which is what the S and M stands for there. So solo will make it the only thing heard. Mute will make it not heard, as you'd imagine. So this button here is the record enable button if you want to record something. This is just monitoring the input of that. You don't have this sort of a thing on all systems, but quite simply you click this button here, the record enable, and you'll be able to record information onto that particular track. So this is your pan knob here, so to the right, sending the signal over to the right speaker of your stereo spectrum, and that's over to your left. For any of these settings, if you hold down Option and click on them, it'd be Alt for your PC computers. If you hold down Alt and click on any of these options, it will reset them to 0. Now, we also have here auto and then a read. Now, this is related to automation, where you can automate these things to move up and down by themselves at particular parts of the track. Usually it will just stay on read, and we'll be covering that in a later video. Now, the output is up here. So this is deciding where you are going to send the output of this particular track. Usually it's going to be going to your main outputs, which is going to be A1 and 2 or out 1 and 2 or speakers, depends what you've called it in your setup. So the one just above this is the input. So this is deciding which one of the inputs you're using to bring signal in when you're recording, only when you're recording. Now, this particular system I'm on right now has 16 inputs, so I can choose any one of these to bring the signal in to record. So, above these normal functions in the mix window, we have two sections here. We have the I section and the S section. Now, I stands for inserts. This is where you can insert an effect in the signal path. And this could be any sort of signal processing. It could be an EQ, a compressor, a reverb, distortion, modulation, any of these sort of things. So, if we click in one of these spots, we can choose either the default ones I've got set up here for equalization or dynamics, or we can go here and have a look through our list and choose something. So many categories here, which is the way I have this set up at the moment, and you can simply just choose any particular effect you want to put on that channel. So for the moment with this kick drum, I could solo the kick drum channel. I've put an EQ on it. I can hit play and then have a mess with these particular parts of the EQ and change the frequencies and make it have more bottom end or less bottom end, etc., etc. Now, this S area here is for sending. This is where you will send a copy of that particular channel, of that particular track, out to go somewhere else and be affected in a different way. We'll be covering those in a later video as well, but for the meantime, we're going to go back on this idea of processing. So we've inserted this EQ over it, and that is in real time. So if I quickly go to the edit window and select a bit of this audio and hit play, while I'm playing this track, more bottom end. Take out some mids. I could add in some top end on a different one. Alright, so that is happening in real time. I can change it while it's happening now. This is going to be using your computer's resources. With modern computers, it's not too much of a stress, but if you pull up 500 of these things, it will slow your computer down. So, the other way that you can process and use effects and audio and so on in Pro Tools is to use what we call the audio suite. So this involves us going back to the edit window, and we can have a look at something like, say, if this kick track here, and I know I permanently want to pull up an EQ and I want to take some mids out of this particular mid, meaning mid frequencies, of course. If I want to take some mids out of it, I could select that region there, pull down the mids, and then hit render, and it will actually take the mids out of that track permanently. So you wouldn't always use it for an EQ. I'll undo that just quickly. You could use this for anything. You can do apply reverb to something, which would be quite unusual, but you could change the gain of a track. you can do a whole bunch of different things. You can add distortion to a particular section of music if you want. So say this few bars in the middle of this section here, we wanted to actually have distortion on this particular drum. I could go to the audio suite menu here in my harmonics section, and I could pull up something like SansAmp, which is a fantastic little distortion module, and hit render, and bang, this particular section will now go from clean to distorted. So get the idea? Nice. At the moment, this distortion and this entire track is still going through the EQ from the other window. I noticed that then I had a bit too much top end. I can also bypass that as well. So bypass is like temporarily switching it off. And that's two ways that you can put effects on in Pro Tools. It's going to be very similar in all your other DAWs, but there we go.